On this week's Carrier App, we will take a look at some of the top news from the carrier space over the past week, as well as dig in a little bit more into T-Mobile's recent Un-carrier announcement and Sprint's decentralization of its operations.
Telecom Careers, the #1 global telecom and wireless job board, telecomcareers.com.
Hello, welcome to this week's Carrier App. I'm your host, Dan Meyer, Editor-in-Chief at RCR Wireless News. And joining me this week again is our Managing Editor, Sean Kinney. Sean, thanks for joining us again this week. We appreciate it.
Always a pleasure, Dan. I enjoy talking carriers with you.
It's always exciting stuff. So, hey, well, a lot of kind of news over the past week on the carrier front. I know mid last week, T-Mobile came out with a big announcement, their Un-carrier announcement. I know Sprint over the weekend had some news as well. But I want to start with just a couple of hot topics as well. I know over the weekend, Verizon had come out with, they brought back their activation fees for some of their new lines of service, a $20 activation fee, which kind of comes and goes depending on their promotional activity. So they brought that back. So new customers signing up for Verizon service, paying an extra $20 to start their service. It's always somewhat controversial because no one really is sure what $20 actually goes towards, but anyway, they brought it back to their $20 fee. Also over the weekend for Verizon, their unlimited customers were now officially being charged $20 extra for the service. Verizon had talked about this, I believe it was last month, announced they were going to bring this back, and this past week it went into effect. So now the Verizon unlimited customers who still have those unlimited data plans are being charged $50 a month as opposed to $30 a month for those rate plans. And so again, Verizon not getting rid of unlimited, but just charging customers a little extra if they want to keep it. So another way for them to generate some revenues. And I know, they've been talking about into 2016 perhaps having a flat revenue going forward. So this could be a way for them to perhaps, if they can, a few dollars here and there might help out in the long term. So some news there from those two front there. I know you're always big fans of extra fees and stuff like that. So I'm sure you're pretty happy with these extra fees kind of being thrown out there for some of these customers as well.
Oh, I can't get enough of it. I mean, I always like to pay an increasing amount for the exact same thing. But yeah, I thought it was interesting Verizon's move as it related to unlimited, just sort of, they can't predict what T-Mobile's going to do, but not fantastic timing from a news perspective for T-Mobile to blow up an unlimited video streaming while they're kicking the price up a little bit on their service plans. But what did you think of the Un-carrier Amped 10 event? I know you did a lot of coverage of it. Yeah,
it was a big news. I mean, they did obviously T-Mobile did quite a bit behind it. They had a big event there in Los Angeles. Had some musical guests there. It was a big thing. But the main focus, I guess, would be probably the video aspect of it. I mean, they also updated some of their simple choice rate plans and made some changes here and there. But it did seem like that the video part of it was kind of the big aspect of this. And what they're doing, obviously, like people probably know by now, but they're offering basically free streaming video from some providers for the service. So it's a very interesting move. They're very confident, obviously, in their network being able to handle this. As part of the announcement, what they're basically doing is they're compressing video streams down to 480p. So not streaming high definition video, they're actually just streaming 480p, which is still on most small screens is probably good enough for most people. So they're kind of getting ahead of kind of this move towards video. I mean, obviously, I think customers in general, when they're streaming content themselves, are always seeking the highest resolution, which probably provides the most damage to a network. And so what T-Mobile is doing really is kind of getting out in front of it. Hey, we'll give you free streaming, but you have to stream at this lower resolution, which you shouldn't notice a difference, but it kind of gets out ahead of, I think, kind of that demand. So it's an interesting move by T-Mobile. I mean, again, it's something that their rivals, if they want to counter it, they can't counter it too quickly because this is stuff that's kind of built into the network, and it's going to take. They've probably been working on it for 12 to 18 months to get the stuff into the network, and so it's not an easy. You can't just drop a rate plan and make it competitive. So that's what I kind of thought about. What was your kind of view of kind of the move of it?
Well, yeah, I think that lower resolution really is sort of the operative part of it. On the network side, a lot of the telecom analysts and people in that sort of community seem to express a lot of concern about whether their network is actually ready for what would be you'd expect to be a pretty big surge in usage. Yeah. But like you said, they've probably been working on it for a year at least. And John Legere and Neville Ray and some of those other C-level guys over there, they haven't really made any huge missteps on rolling out services. So I got to think that they are well aware that their network can support the projected demand. But I guess one thing that I find might be a pitfall of them is this quality of experience on the end. And that goes beyond just the resolution quality, because T-Mobile has a great network so long as you live in some pretty big metro areas. But once you get out of them, that's going to fall off a little bit. And a lot of that's because of their spectrum positioning too. So it'll be interesting to see if there is any backlash, because quality of experience, that's a huge marker right now. And it really is a hot buzzword. And part of that is if I was inclined to change carriers, it would take me a solid half hour to do it. So they need to very concerned about how I'm interacting with their services and whether I'm enjoying them or not. But I will say, in terms of a consumer trade-off, I think I personally would trade video quality for unlimited streaming use without it affecting my data plan. So I think that's probably a studied consideration on T-Mobile's part. And I think that'll probably turn out pretty good for them. One thing I really am interested to see, and it's totally dependent on the FCC opting to or to not push the position, is how these, it was initially raised by Commissioner Pai when they launched music freedom earlier in the year, but it's the exact same issue, just packaged around video. So, does not charging for data as it relates to these streaming services violate net neutrality? I'm really curious to see some sort of definitive position on it. Obviously, John Legere says no, it doesn't, but I would like to see a unbiased breakdown of that as it applies to the letter and intent of the open internet order.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's a good point. This is going to, I think, maybe bring up some issues. I mean, I think T-Mobile perhaps was a bit emboldened by the fact that when they did launch music freedom, there were some concerns, but in the end, nobody brought up, there was no legal filing, nothing was brought up about it. So perhaps, looking into how they implemented it, maybe it didn't violate the terms. And so perhaps T-Mobile's thinking, hey, we did that correctly. They've got good lawyers, I'm sure, on staff there, and they think that what they've done, and what they've done with the video part, it is an opt-in, opt-out kind of thing. They're not charging for it. They are allowing, they said that's open to any video provider as long as you meet some technical requirements. And obviously, initially, YouTube is not one of those. So Google obviously has some issues with it, but yeah, I think they've tried to structure it in a way to maybe work around that net neutrality issue. That's obviously a big issue. But I think we'll see. I mean, maybe this combined with music freedom might be enough to push some legal movement. But yeah, I agree with you 100%. It's going to be interesting to see how this plays out in that. And, and I think T-Mobile's in a position too, where I think they're considered to be very consumer friendly. So I think commissioners and a lot of consumer groups perhaps are not quite as active to go after them. I think if AT&T or Verizon perhaps launched this, there might be more of an issue brought up just because of their position in the market. So, however that plays, I mean, T-Mobile, I think, has done a pretty smart job in how they've positioned it and where they are in the market. So they've done a pretty good job, I think, in trying to, where they are. But that's a good point. Net neutrality is going to be a big part of this.
Well, yeah, and I guess, net neutrality, we've been talking about it for years, but the legislation is not that old. So really, once you get the legislation in place, the next phase of that process is interpretation. How do we apply this to what's happening in the country? So, I mean, it is a gray area, and they've moved into it quickly, aggressively, and to great benefit to the company. So, I mean, that's a good move, and it really does turn up the competition between them and the other competitors, Sprint particularly. I mean, they're pulling away.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I know Sprint's got an announcement coming out this week as well, so we'll see what happens there. But one more thing too on the Un-carrier, the video, the Binge On thing was, and I think they're taking this into account too. I think that T-Mobile assumes that even though they are offering this free cellular video streaming, I'm guessing most consumers, and they probably see this from their own traffic demands, is that they're probably seeing still most of their consumers are doing their video streaming over a Wi-Fi connection. And just because of the fact that they do it over cellular, the video quality might go down, they're probably assuming to an extent that customers, while they can stream over cellular for free, probably will still prefer to do it over a Wi-Fi connection. And so they might not see perhaps that huge spike in demand that could be out there. Most consumers might already have if they're doing it on a tablet, for instance, and it's a Wi-Fi only tablet, they're not too concerned about, going out buying a T-Mobile device and then doing it with cellular at that point. So I think that the spike in demand might not be so severe because T-Mobile has done a very good job. I mean, they were giving out free Wi-Fi, microcells to customers as well, too. So I think they've done a good job of seeding the market and probably see that their own consumers are using mostly Wi-Fi. So maybe not such a big network.
Yeah, I agree with you to that extent. And I do not hesitate to burn through cellular data. I think I go through about 13 gigs a month, a lot more when I'm traveling, which is all the time. But I always look for a Wi-Fi connection before I start watching a video. And I don't foresee changing that behavior until we see a massive restructuring in cellular data price models. So I think that's a point well made.
Yeah, we'll see what plays out there. But yeah, so again, a big announcement from them. And like I said, we'll see what Sprint comes back with competitive-wise because they are probably the most impacted by this move. So what happens there. But speaking of Sprint, I know over the weekend too, there was stories that came out about Sprint rearranging their organizational structure. I know in the past they've been talking about cutting costs. You've covered this quite a bit, them looking to cut $2.5 billion in costs out of operations. And it seems like perhaps one way to do that is kind of maybe cutting their staff in Overland Park, kind of maybe more of a regional approach to things. What's your general view? Obviously, this is kind of, came from an interview with Marcelo Clare on the topic. But what's your kind of view, I think, of what they're looking to do in terms of kind of like moving things out to more of a local approach, at least in some big markets?
Yeah, that's exactly right, Dan. They have a giant campus there in Overland Park, and basically the tack that we're going to see is a decentralization and a reorganization physically of the company. What they're going to do is consolidate into 4 large regional offices, each with someone in charge that is a direct report to Claret. Then they're also going to maintain presence in, I believe it's 19 key metropolitan markets around the country. So they can, ideally, they can save some money by cutting staff and then better positioning the staff that they're maintaining to directly serve where they can get the best growth from the company, which is going to be these metropolitan markets right now. But it will be interesting to see how, as they undertake a network improvement plan, if their ambitions to decentralize make that process more complicated, and that if you need a nationwide approach but have people with input all over the country, does that disrupt your ability to deploy quickly when you're looking at 70,000 small cells? And if you're starting, which they presumably will, with these 19 key metropolitan markets, does that sort of dilute the chain of command and slow down the ability to bring live these new services and new infrastructure? It very much open, and we'll see how it plays out the next. These things like this take years, so I really don't know what the benchmarks we're going to see over the next few months, if any, are going to be. But I think the next thing we're going to see out of Sprint is some sort of targeted layoffs, and it'll be interesting to see where they make those layoffs. I think we can both kind of project that they won't come from the network side, right?
Hopefully, yes.
So then that will make it. Yeah, so then it'll have to come from somewhere else. Probably a lot of opportunities in call center automation and removing some of those people. Automation is not a word, excuse me.
That's the same thing.
Except one's a word and one's not. But hey. All right, well, and this is my editor-in-chief, folks, telling me automation, no problem.
Look for an RCR a lot that's coming up. So, and again, I think what they're trying to do too is, I think they've shown some great success in Chicago. Chicago's been kind of one of these key markets for them where they've, they really have shown some great network improvements there, root metric scores, things like that. That's been a real key for them. They've cozied up with the local politicians there, talk about jobs there. So it seems like what they're trying to do is trying to take that Chicago model and expand it to some other big markets. And again, going after markets that they'll have the biggest bang for their buck. Obviously trying to steal customers away from other carriers. You want to go to dense markets. And if you can tap into the 2.5 spectrum, their small cells, like you're talking about there, really provide a really powerful network there. They can perhaps see the most, like I said, again, bang for their buck and try to get the customers, away from rivals.
And yeah, you made a great point there talking about developing those political connections in key markets. I beat this drum all the time on my infrastructure coverage, and that's other than cost, the single biggest holdup to small cell deployment is concurrency with people that work at local governments all over the country. They all have a different set of planning and zoning laws. And so that means you can't scale a process to be a one-size-fits-all for a deployment. Yeah. So if they are going to concentrate their efforts related to small cells in these metro markets, it would really behoove them to have pre-existing relationships with the people that can make or break that process. So I think that's a point well taken again. And it's going to be interesting to see how Sprint maintains their current trajectory or grows on it in the next year, because they really are kind of quickly approaching a make or break point, and it can't all be solved internally by cost cutting. You can't make money by spending less. You have to do both. And so what's going to come down to for them is that network side, and they've got to start getting some customers from somebody. And so if you sort of examine the relationship they're having with T-Mobile's doing it through innovative services that are brought to market quickly and through aggressive marketing. Yeah. So, I mean, could Sprint learn something from that? Could they take a look at that marketing piece and better position themselves? Which is, I mean, that's a really interesting approach, because it does cost money, but it doesn't cost near as much money as deploying national infrastructure.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, and again, I know they have an announcement coming out this week, so we'll see what they come out with. But you're right. I mean, we're coming to the holiday season now too. Third quarter or their fiscal second quarter, they had some good results. Again, nothing out of the park, but they again some positive return, and it's just going to be a matter of them keeping that momentum. While at the same time, again, T-Mobile is not laying off, and they're aggressive. And Verizon and AT&T, Verizon might be raising prices, but they're obviously very comfortable with where they are in the market. And AT&T, again, a big carrier out there as well. So yeah, I mean, for Sprint, unfortunately, they've been in these make or break situations. It seems like every year for the past 7 or 8 years. But you're right. I think with the new management in place now, networks moving. This is going to be an important next 3 to 6 months for them to really see how they can kind of keep the momentum if they can. So. And you get longer term, obviously, too, but that helps.
And I guess one other thing that strikes me about that relationship between Sprint and T-Mobile on one side and AT&T and Verizon on the other is that Sprint and T-Mobile are so consumer-centric, whereas AT&T and Verizon, by virtue of the fact that they're much larger companies, have really divested what they're doing in terms of service offerings to bring in enterprises, to bring in municipalities. They're spending huge money developing Internet of Things type applications and services, same connected car. Sprint and T-Mobile aren't really doing that. Consumers are their bread and butter, whereas Verizon and AT&T have a much broader base of money that they can make. So that Sprint T-Mobile relationship is the one I'm really interested in, because it changes so quickly. It's a fascinating dynamic.
Yeah, definitely is. Well, obviously great insight there, Sean, from you on the topic as well. And actually this week I had a chance to speak with Bill Ho, who's the principal analyst at 556 Ventures, on some of these topics as well. We kind of dug in a bit to the Un-carrier announcement, as well as what Sprint's been up to. So let's go ahead and move to that interview now. Check that out. But again, thanks, Sean, for joining this week. We appreciate it. All right, well, today we're talking with Bill Ho, who's the principal analyst at 556 Ventures. Hey, Bill, thanks again for joining us this week. We appreciate it.
You bet.
Great. Well, let's talk with, obviously, recently, T-Mobile came out with their Un-carrier 10X, whatever announcement you want to call it. A lot of big news came out, a lot of, I guess, changes to some rate plans, obviously the video thing going on there. I guess we've had some time now to kind of absorb what actually it entailed. As you look at that announcement, what I guess jumped out at you as kind of being the biggest part of that announcement? Because it did seem like there were several pieces to it. For you, looking at the market, what was perhaps the biggest, thing that came out of that announcement?
I think first and foremost, on a macro level, I think it's a win. So it continues the momentum that they've had for a couple of years. Mm-hmm. So I'll touch upon it from a couple perspectives. So from consumer perspective, maybe the investor, the internal, and then regulatory, and what it means to competition. So from a consumer standpoint, they're positioning it as more value. So it's not necessarily price, it's value now. So they were the price leader. Now they're pushing what you get as part of being a T-Mobile subscriber. So within Un-carrier 10, they double data.
Yep.
So doubling data is always good, especially when people are consuming more and more.
Yeah.
It kind of caters to that base that they're catering to.
Yeah.
They're within there. The video is 0 rated. So the big thing was Binge On. So 0 rating means that if you take and by default Binge On is on, and then you can opt out. But 0 rating is basically free, so it doesn't hit your data bucket. So that's another value story there. That if they're targeting millennials who binge on Netflix or Hulu or whatever the case may be, maybe in the future YouTube, then it's a great deal.
Yeah,
especially going into Q4 when the huge part of the upgrades and renewals come.
Yeah.
So again, it's strong positioning going into Q4 holiday selling, and they've got the momentum.
Yeah. I mean, I guess, but as part of it though too, I mean, they did raise pricing on their unlimited data plans by $15. I think is what it came out to be, which that wasn't a huge part of the announcement, obviously, but that was in there as well. Is that? I guess is that a tricky proposition? But I mean, I know they do offer the Binge On, which kind of, I guess, they're claiming counteracts the fact that people won't need as much data because because video is obviously a big part of data consumption. But do you think that'll have a big impact on their value positioning, or do you think just the fact that they did double the data on the regular rate plans, is that enough again to counteract kind of that price?
So harping on the value proposition is that it's not shareable data, it's all theirs, and then they've got the whole background of going down to edge speeds. So you got that containing the value prop, but at the same time, I think the price increase is really targeted to investors to say, hey, we are not losing money, because the investor community is like, how can they do this? How can they continue to acquire customers, pay all those termination fees for everybody, pay all those handset termination fees, right? And to some extent, it's building the story for, we are interested in profitability, and this is a way to pay for the subscriber acquisition. And so I think that in itself plays well to the investor community, because don't forget, even though Deutsche Telekom owns a majority of them, the investor community owns the majority of Deutsche Telekom. Yes. So there's a story that needs to be played across the board. And then within Binge On, you need 3 gigabit minimum, 3 gigabyte minimum plan. So it's a migration story, right? So for those people who are kind of price sensitive and they want that free video, which that everybody, that base wants, then they might migrate. So there's that possibility. And then so again, to the investor, where everybody's saying, how can they do this? Because their network's going to get clogged. They're signing subscribers up at such record levels. Everybody using video. They're going to clog their network. So Uncarrier 10 with this Binge On has another story there that fits into that worry, that network worry, and that's internal. And so just to recap, it's a proprietary technology. They ingest video in the gateway. So they identify it, and they're actually data offloading. And I think that the internal story is we know that video is going to kill us. Let's do something proactively. And if you ingest it and you not encode it, but you
compress it down.
Yeah. So if you're known as, let's say, 60% video, and you compress it down to 480 to the users and give them, you know that anyway. So if you're reducing that, you're kind of like either breaking even or lowering your data. So therefore, you can handle more from a data network. So I mean, I give credit to them and Neville Ray to address that. So that's kind of the internal and external investor proactive story.
Yeah, that's a good point. It does seem like that there was that issue because there people were coming out and saying, "Hey, we should crash their networks." But they are taking a very proactive approach in this. Kind of saying, we know videos out there. We're going to acknowledge that. And what we're doing now is just we're going to press it, optimize it on our network, doing it for free because the consumers complain about it, and kind of provide it as value customers out there.
Right. And so it's an operational expense productivity story.
Yeah.
So but at the same time, going back to the consumer side and internally in customer acquisition, anybody who wants, the existing base who wants free video, I mean, that's a churn reduction story, right? So it appeals, as we said, to the millennials who kind of binge on, or people who like video and eat video, eat and sleep video all the time. But if you think about the families, really, so if you look at kind of the promotions in the past, it's bringing on multiple lines in, right? And in the back in 05 or more, family plans have been known to be churn reducing things, elements. Yep. And so the more people, if you think about the buying psychology of, mom, dad, and having, teenagers, preteens who are just going on video all the time, it's kind of a proactive buying, story. It depends on how the salespeople position it, but if that's going to be the case, it's kind of a win for store reps, playing to that demographic. And again, in the end, it's churn reduction.
Yeah, that's a good point. Now let's go to that zero rating part of this, because you bring up the fact that this they aren't. I guess they're not necessarily charging customers for it. So that's kind of what it seems like, how they're kind of sidestepping the net neutrality issue of this, because that was kind of brought up, I think, over the past week, that how are they able to do this with the fact that there is a net neutrality issue, and are they favoring some video providers on all video providers? And what they were saying was, this is open to everybody. If they want to get on board, there's a few requirements, which perhaps that could be some of the issue there. But I guess, what's your view on how they're able to, get past this, maybe a regulatory challenge or issue when it comes to?
It's funny, when music freedom came out, where streaming, you would think, I mean, the same issues came up. Yep. And, here we are. Has there been any test cases in court, right? I mean, how they're trying to get around it is that it's a opt out, right? So as opposed to opt in. Yep. The opt out is that you're always going to get 480, and you can either turn it off, and not necessarily on the handset, but through the portal or through a customer service rep. Yep. And who would want to do that, right? If you're going to be binging on, and it's sufficiently annoying and inconvenient, as opposed to turning on as a phone setting, right? Mm-hmm. So that it would be always on for those people who are kind of, they don't pay attention. Yep. So it's a win for them. So again, it has been challenged in courts. Has music freedom been challenged in courts? And will this be challenged in the courts? I know there's been a lot of strong anti, even though it's seemingly pro-consumer, mm-hmm. It's a lot of people have been writing that it's anti-net neutrality. The proof of the pudding comes in when someone brings up a lawsuit.
Yeah, that's a good. I guess you're right. I'm guessing T-Mobile, again, because of music freedom. Yeah, you're right. There was no challenge really to that. They're probably thinking, hey, obviously no one can find any issue with it, so it's just the next extension of that. Really, that's all it is.
Right. So I mean, the year's still young, or until those things crop up. So there's going to be a test case somewhere maybe the combination of music freedom and this video will prompt a test case. But right now, just very, you don't know really where it lands, and until it actually goes to courts and tested and a decision comes out, we'll know if it violates net neutrality. Yeah, and
T-Mobile did a pretty good job of at least providing enough opt out and different ways that seems like that they're able to kind of make this not such a. It doesn't seem like it's regimented where you have to do it. I mean, you can definitely choose to do it or choose not to do it. It's not. Yeah.
And that opt out is strategic. So again, it's opt in until you opt out. Yeah. So by default, they're helping the network. Yeah. So again, it's strategic on their part, and there's smart people over there in regulatory and legal. So they figured.
Yeah, they figured what to do. Yeah.
They figured the position, whether it's defensible or not. Time will tell.
Yeah, exactly. True. No, I guess so. Now, what does the competition do to this? I mean, obviously, carriers are always. I mean, they've always been afraid of video. There's been various platforms that have been launched. I know Verizon just did their Go 90 video platform, which seems somewhat similar in the fact that I think it's them trying to optimize their network, certain parts of the network to handle video. So that was kind of what they've done to their part. Again, that's not quite as broad as what this Binge On thing was. But what do the other carriers now do with this? I mean, do you think they're going to sit back and wait and kind of see how this plays out? Do you think they'll have to get aggressive targeting this? Because video is, it's a growing part of the market, and some segments of the market are huge on video. So that could be a pretty big driver for a lot of customers. What do you think that the rivals have to do?
Right. So there's a competition hits on a couple levels, right? For first and foremost, going to Q4 is plan changes, right? So it's double the data. When you're going into upgrade or renew your plans, you kind of look at, okay, am I getting the value for my dollar, and who's got the best? So that's part of buying psychology. And from the standpoint of matching, they can either match or I think Verizon and AT&T have been showing a lot of restraint in the past year in not doing that. And the reason why is that they're going after kind of the profits, right? So everybody knows in the industry who's been watching that they're saving the high value users, which really means retention. So it's a proactive retention where, Joe, a homeowner is getting 10 gig and they get a call or they contact, and then they get 15 gig as a added value. And, most people who are staying with a carrier, unless they're looking, kind of like, wow, that's a nice bonus. And they don't really, a lot of people may not competitively shop if they're happy with the network and service and such. And so you got the proactive retention happening at Verizon, AT&T, I believe. Mm-hmm. And then Sprint is really it, right? So Sprint is fighting for kind of the same demographic. Their pointing ratios are in the negative against T-Mobile. So, I mean, they got to do something. They're, of all people, or of all companies, are the most vulnerable because they're in a precarious state and they want to increase their sub count. So if any carriers out there, they should be logically the ones who either match in feature or price, minimum price. So that's it on the plan front. But from really the Binge On, how do you go up against it? So T-Mobile has said that within there, it's been working for a couple of years. Yeah, you've been working on this a couple of years. So you don't, if you were the competition, unless you've got that in the hopper. Yeah. And thinking about that, it doesn't roll out in one quarter, right? It's got to be testing. You got a lot of vendor partners going on. So if anything, it'd probably be in 16, unless they already got it in the hopper. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. And honestly, again, with Verizon with their Go 90, at least they've got that kind of moving out. AT&T's got the DirecTV division now, which perhaps could give them, at some point, if they can. Again, you're right. The technology aspect of it is going to be the challenge. I mean, whatever T-Mobile's doing is, they're claiming 3 times as efficient of a video transmission, but that could also just be because they're compressing video from which could be HD video down to 480p. So that could be their savings there. But yeah, it does seem like, if the technology is not in the network, it will take some time perhaps to get that in there. And so you're right, the rivals could be, I guess they might be forced into a wait and see mode, only because they really can't do much about it without, perhaps damaging their network at some level. So they're kind of waiting. And don't forget that there's different business models happening here, right? So the Verizon 18 business model is, and they've always said, is increasing ARPU and ARPA. Yeah. So that means that video has always been an ARPA driver to go up to the next level, whether you buy it or you find that you need it, as opposed to T-Mobile's is a value story, as I said before, is that everybody gets, let's say 10 gig or 5 gig. So that's a value story that you come to us, you get this free video, you get value, as opposed to the other guys who are looking to increase profitability and increase data stickiness. So to some extent, that's kind of the clash in business models that doesn't really lend itself to technically match, maybe from a back end standpoint, but that's how I see it. And that's probably the most genius thing about their announcement was, obviously the rate plan parts were a big push, especially ahead of the holidays. But those are things that carriers can match, or that doesn't take much to kind of throw out a new rate plan. But yeah, the technological part of the video part is that's probably the part that they're like, hey, this is, try to match this if you can, and that's something you're right. Unless they've got something ready to go, that's something they can't do. So that was at least a pretty aggressive move by T-Mobile there to put the pressure on him. Data optimization and video optimization technology has been around for a while. Sure. Yeah. It's just a matter of I think that there's also that, do you encode it? Do you change the content when you ingest it and deliver it? I mean, that's kind of a touchy subject. Technically it can be done. Yeah. It's a regulatory or legal touchy subject of, hey, you screwed around with my content and therefore you buy whatever,
And maybe I guess the point too. I mean, obviously, T-Mobile does seem to have a much more consumer-friendly nature. It seems like to it. So I'm guessing regulators perhaps aren't looking as aggressively at T-Mobile. If AT&T or Verizon did this, obviously, T-Mobile would be complaining about it, I'm sure, to regulators, and so it'd get a lot more attention, I'm guessing, from regulators if it was one of the two big guys who were trying to do something like this. It might be a little trickier for them to craft it in a way that didn't, seem like they were being, anti net neutrality. So, obviously T-Mobile's in a different position than those guys are, and they could be perhaps a little more liberal with the rules when it comes to net neutrality. So
yeah, and you've been around the block in this industry for a while.
Is it showing? Do I have a lot of wrinkles? Go ahead.
And I think it's brand positioning and PR, right? It's the brand. If it's consumer friendly and everybody is signing up in droves, and they can point to how strong the network is and why people are coming over for the value, and it's just PR positioning that and brand positioning that they are consumer friendly and they're doing everything for consumers. So I mean, I guess cynically, it's a business, right? So they wouldn't be giving away because it's, in the end, it's business. It's about profits. It's about free cash flow and all that stuff. So
on
the other side, it's business.
Yeah. I mean, in the last quarter, they posted a nice little profit in the last quarter. I'm sure they want to keep that going. I mean, obviously DT is a big company behind them, but there's still questions about whether DT wants to keep T-Mobile US for a long term, and if they don't, obviously you want to have T-Mobile US showing some profitability because that makes it easier to position for a potential deal down the road too. So yeah, you're right. I think at the end of the day, they're not. This shouldn't hurt them financially because I'm sure they've taken all that into account. They don't want to jeopardize their current upswing perhaps in terms of revenue. So I'm sure they're again, smart guys there, smart network guys. They probably planned all this out quite a bit ahead of time. So
yeah, I mean, from the macro view, all this is predictable. They acquire customers, they got to grow revenue, and they got to increase profit, and so ergo the price increases.
Yeah, it's interesting. And again, it's one of the first moves ahead of the holiday season, obviously too. I know later this week, Sprint is supposed to announce something. They're hyping something as well. So it does seem like T-Mobile at least got out ahead of everybody else in terms of perhaps positioning ahead of Black Friday or whatever coming up here in the next couple of weeks. So at least gets them out there ahead of time, and they kind of put their cards on the table, saying this is what we have for the holidays. I mean, they can always bring out more as well, but at least it kind of shows that they've pretty big. I mean, they did a big presentation in LA about this, so obviously getting a lot of hype around it was kind of their push there. So I guess we'll see how everybody reacts to it going down the road here. But I guess maybe off topic a little bit and moving maybe towards Sprint. They also kind of had some issues over the weekend where they some interviews came out with Marcelo Correa about their decentralizing, I guess, their operations, kind of moving things out of Overland Park perhaps a bit and kind of moving things more in a regional basis. I guess, it was kind of more, not a lot of information on, but what was your view on kind of what they're thinking about doing and maybe what their focus is on kind of this I guess, new move for them to kind of get things more out into the local markets?
Yeah, it's interesting whether it's centralized or decentralized. I think it's kind of in the cycle of a company, right? So the foil to that is Verizon centralizing. Yeah, they're closing regional centers.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
they're downsizing staff or layoffs basically, and they're centralizing in Baskin Ridge, right? Or minimizing the number of regional centers. So that's interesting. So the Sprint is kind of the other foil. So you have Verizon, who's been turning in really, really good profits and just doing all that and to drive down costs. And that's kind of like textbook B school, just drive down costs in order to maximize profits. And then you have Sprint, which is kind of, they're struggling.
Yeah.
So I think the decentralizing is interesting, and I think it's based upon Chicago. So I think they've said Chicago is kind of the model for all the other markets to go forward with. So, for those of us who's been following Sprint for a while, even Dan Hesse was saying Chicago is going to be a market to look out for, and they've always put so much capital and influence in Chicago. And so, if you quickly recap Chicago, you got the commitment to create so many number of jobs.
Yep.
You've got the very, very public mayor of Chicago, announcement about that.
Yep.
The strong political ties, the strong marketing ties, the strong network. So Chicago has always been where I think Sprint has been throwing a lot of network resources to win that market. And, 2 carrier aggregation, maybe 3 carrier aggregation to beef it up. And so moving to the other markets and having those regional heads reporting straight to the CEO, it's kind of, I think that they're kind of trying to replicate the same playbook. So if you hear about investor conferences, they say basically, hey, we don't really need national marketing. We'll go local marketing. And that's what Chicago was. And they've shown success there. And so they've made more resource investments probably in regional marketing and regional, subscriber acquisition. On the network side, it's where, if you take a look at those networks, the markets, they're basically large cities, and that's where customers are. And likely, as we said previously, that's where 2.5 that works well in terms of coverage and capacity in dense urban markets. So it's a win. They boost up their network. They win root metrics reports. And they're going to win speed tests there once they go beyond 2 carrier aggregation. And so, that's kind of a future bet that will probably play out in 16 and maybe 17 in terms of winning. If the playbook is implemented well and distribution increases.
Yeah, that's interesting point. You brought up the Verizon part because I almost forgot about that. But you're right. They were bringing things back in house. But again, Verizon's long history is they were a bunch of regional operating companies that were acquired back in 2000, 2001, whatever. And so I think they had a lot of those offices kind of around everywhere. And it did. I think over the years they've obviously consolidated some of those. But this does seem like one of the latest push, I guess, and kind of bringing it all back to headquarters there. Where with Sprint, for a while there, they were obviously Overland Park for a long time. Then they got the Nextel deal, so they had a lot of stuff in Reston. Then they kind of brought all those people back in Overland Park. So they were kind of almost centralizing because they have a huge campus in Overland Park. That's a big complex. But they have talked about recently about trying to, maybe sell off some of those assets there. They don't need quite as many people in Overland Park. And it's almost like just pushing out now to the regional areas. Definitely interesting you brought up there that it is the 2 ways that those 2 companies are going about what they've done over their history. This is just kind of the next move along that line there. Again, trying to drive the business as much as you can and run down costs and customer acquisition. So
the big nugget from Sprint is bringing out 2.5 billion, right? So they public said we're going to bring 2.5 billion, and some of it is transforming the business. And that's your code word to basically prove that your business unit, this function is necessary for the operation of the company. So that's 2.5 billion is they've said that so many times. The guy hit it, right? So so that goes back to Overland Park, and even though it's a low cost center relative to the coast, it's still a high cost from a staffing standpoint.
Exactly.
Pure bodies. So that comes into play to kind of spread it. So maybe from a playbook standpoint, look to see political, not deals, but
agreements. It's nice. And again, with the Chicago deal, when they got the mayor out there and they had the meet and greets and the big photo ops there. that was a pretty big push. Sprint throughout the year, you're right. They've definitely talked a lot about the Chicago operations. They've given tours of their cell sites there. They've had the big, the meetings with the mayor, talking about the job that they're going to bring in there. They've definitely kind of cozied up with the local politicians. And politicians always want to, talk about bringing jobs to the market and bringing, advanced broadband to the market. And those are key political themes anyway for all these companies. So if Sprint can partner with those political themes in some of these larger markets, it's a win-win it's a win for Sprint, obviously, for the PR perspective. And it's a win for the local government to kind of say, hey, this is what we're doing. We're bringing in jobs, we're bringing in advanced broadband, or, all this great stuff. So
cynically, there's probably another element to it where we're going to, it's a give and take. We're going to bring in all these jobs, swing your cell phone service, competitors A and B or C, and then that stuff happens. And
you're right. I'm sure. The local governments that if they're Verizon customers, perhaps they're gonna part of the deal they all switch to Sprint, or or maybe the city gives Sprint some tax breaks on some things locally. I mean, yeah, there's always, the political part behind the scenes that are going on. I'm sure have a big part of this as well. And and if that's what Sprint's doing, I mean, that's pretty smart. I mean, you got to give them credit for, taking advantage of the local environment, the local climate when it comes to the political aspects there. And, that's a smart move by them.
Yeah, so I think looking forward, it's going to be interesting to see how much of the playbook is implemented and if there's local modifications. But suffice to say that the national marketing would be kind of downplayed in favor of local. I think also the CFO in an investor conference talked about kind of not sponsoring NASCAR.
Well, that deal should be good. Yeah, you're right. You're right.
The Sprint Cup will probably not happen based upon those comments. But
yeah, and that was it was interesting that came out of the next deal. They inherited that NASCAR thing, and it was a big investment that they had, and I'm sure with this big job with the big cost cuts that they're trying to do, I'm sure that's probably going to be on the table. Is that where, I mean, NASCAR is not the big sport that it was 10 years ago when this deal was first announced.
So you remember the next sale, the target demo might be the NASCAR demo.
Yeah.
As time goes by, the PTT segment is kind of marginalized and really doesn't really matter that much in the scheme of wireless anymore. So, that's a financial and business decision.
Yeah, going after a different demographic there. And that's the other thing too. I mean, in the Chicago stuff, I think the Chicago market, if I remember correctly, Sprint had picked up U.S. Cellular's assets there. I know U.S. Cellular a while ago sold off some stuff, and that was part of it. So, and U.S. Cellular always had a very robust network in Chicago. And so, as I'm thinking about it now, it's like I think Sprint was able to take advantage of what U.S. Cellular probably already had in place, because I think it included spectrum and network assets there. And so Sprint was able to, that was a few years ago now. So it seemed like they were able to at least take advantage of maybe what U.S. Cellular already had in place. Obviously, bring more spectrum to the table, and again, just taking advantage of what was kind of out there and being smart about it.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. So they are spectrum rich in that market as well, based upon that. But just as a side about U.S. Cellular as a DNA, they followed basically the Verizon playbook in network. And if you take a look at their postpaid base, it's almost Verizon-like, 90%. So, in doing so, they built a robust network that, as you said, Sprint can take advantage of, or has taken advantage of.
Yeah, exactly. Doing that right now. So, well, hey, Bill, always a lot of great news happening in the market. Always good to get your insight there on what's happening. I think I get a little too deep into things at times, and I don't see the big picture. You're always going to bring kind of that macro view of things, which is always nice to see. So we definitely appreciate that. I definitely recommend those who are watching as well. Check out Bill's website. You can go to 556ventures.com, and also check out Bill on Twitter. He's very active on Twitter. Whenever something's going on, Bill's on top of it on Twitter. You can see him at Bill Ho, at BILLHO 888, which I'm not sure what the 888 is for, but that's what it is. It's at Bill Ho 888. What's the 888 for?
I have no idea.
Okay, well, there you go. There's no reason behind it. Maybe there's a secret reason he won't tell us about. But anyway, go to Twitter. You can follow Bill there. Again, like I said, he's always posting some commentary on there about what's happening in the market. Not just telecom, but also some sporting events as well. He's on that as well. So you can check that out. Bill's always got great commentary there. But hey, Bill, we definitely appreciate the time again this week. Thanks so much for that. And hopefully we'll talk again soon on one of these great topics.
Great. You bet.
That sounds good. Well, again, everyone, thanks for watching this week's show. And make sure to check us out again next week.